Look around you for a moment. Walk into a coffee shop. Sit quietly and watch how people treat each other. Watch who gets interrupted in conversations and who never gets interrupted. Watch who gets ignored by the waiter and who gets served immediately. Something strange is happening in those rooms. Before anyone speaks a word, before anyone shows their intelligence, before anyone proves their character, the room has already made a decision. It has decided who matters. And more importantly, but who doesn't. Society likes to pretend this isn't true. From childhood, we are taught a comforting moral lesson. Don't judge a book by its cover. It sounds noble, it sounds fair, it sounds like the kind of world we want to believe we live in. But the brutal reality of human psychology is very different. People judge you in seconds, not minutes, not hours, seconds, your clothes, your posture, your grooming, the way you walk into a room. All of these signals are processed instantly by the human brain. And once that judgment is made, it is almost impossible to reverse. Robert Greene once explained this reality with ruthless clarity. In the world of power, perception is not just important. Perception is everything. If you appear weak, people treat you as weak. If you appear powerful, people treat you as powerful. And if you appear poor, everything in the system begins working against you. Doors close. Respect disappears. Opportunities vanish before you even know they existed. This is not because the world is fair. It is because the human brain is lazy. People do not have the time or energy to investigate your true potential. They rely on shortcuts, psychological shortcuts. These shortcuts are called status signals. The brain constantly scans for them. Who looks important? Who looks successful? Who looks valuable? And most dangerously, who looks like they can be ignored? When someone appears poor, the brain unconsciously places them into a very specific category. Low status, and once you are placed in that category, something subtle begins to happen. People stop investing energy in you. They talk over you. They doubt your ideas. They assume you lack competence. Not because they know anything about you, but because your appearance told them a story of lack, a story of low value, a story of weakness. This is why Robert Greene's philosophy often sounds harsh, because it refuses to lie about human nature. Power is not granted to the most moral person. Power is granted to the person who appears powerful. This principle has existed for thousands of years. In ancient kingdoms, rulers understood something modern people forget. A king did not dress like a common man. He wore robes. He wore symbols of authority. He surrounded himself with visual displays of power, not because he needed them personally, but because the population needed to see them. Humans trust appearances more than reality. If a king looked weak, his kingdom would eventually treat him as weak. Rebellions would grow. Enemies would rise. Authority would collapse. But if the king looked untouchable, even powerful rivals would hesitate to challenge him. This psychological principle still governs modern society. Only now the battlefield is not a throne room. It is everywhere. The workplace, social circles, business meetings, dating or networking events. Everywhere humans interact, status signals are constantly being exchanged. And the harsh truth is this: if you look poor, you are sending a dangerous signal. Not just about money, but about discipline, self-respect, control, and power. Because when people see someone who looks careless, disorganized, or defeated, they unconsciously assume deeper problems exist beneath the surface. They assume this person lacks structure, lacks discipline, lacks control over their life. And if someone cannot control their own life, why would anyone trust them with responsibility? Why would anyone offer them opportunity? Why would anyone take them seriously? This is how the invisible system begins working against you. Not through open hostility, but through quiet neglect. You are not attacked. You are simply ignored. And being ignored is one of the most dangerous positions a person can occupy in a competitive world, because opportunities rarely announce themselves loudly. They pass quietly between people who appear valuable, between people who appear capable, between people who appear successful. If you are not perceived as part of that circle, you are invisible, and invisible people rarely rise. This is why Robert Greene emphasizes the power of appearance and perception throughout his work. Not because appearances are morally superior, but because they shape reality. A person who looks powerful will be given opportunities that a more talented but poorly presented person will never receive. This is one of the darkest truths of social dynamics. The world does not reward potential. The world rewards signals of value, and appearance is the most immediate signal of all. Before you speak, before you prove anything, before anyone knows your story, your appearance has already introduced you. It has already made an argument about who you are. The question is simple. What argument is it making? Is it saying discipline? Is it saying confidence? Is it saying success? Or is it saying defeat? Because when you look poor, you are not just showing financial struggle. You are broadcasting a narrative to the world. A narrative that says, this person is not winning. And human psychology is ruthless toward those who appear to be losing. People follow winners. They support winners. They invest in winners. But they distance themselves from those who appear defeated, not out of cruelty, but out of instinct. Because humans are deeply influenced by status hierarchies. We constantly evaluate who is rising and who is falling, and we adjust our behavior accordingly. So when someone walks into a room looking sharp, composed, and controlled, the brain instantly registers a powerful message. This person matters. But when someone walks in looking careless, tired, unpolished, and defeated, the opposite message is received, and the room reacts accordingly. This is the silent battle happening every day in every social environment. A battle of perception, a battle of signals, a battle that most people do not even realize they are fighting. But the people who understand it, the people who master it, gain a powerful advantage, because they control the story before anyone else gets the chance to write it. And that story begins with one simple rule. Never allow yourself to look powerless. Because once the world believes you are powerless, everything will begin working against you. Because once the world believes you are powerless, everything begins working against you. But here is the deeper question most people never ask. Why does this happen? Why does the human brain react so strongly to appearance? Why do people instinctively trust someone who looks powerful, even before they prove anything? To understand this, we need to examine something Robert Greene repeatedly discusses in his work: status signals. Human beings are obsessed with hierarchy. Whether we admit it or not, every social environment organizes itself into invisible levels of status. There are people who command attention, people who receive respect, and people who are quietly pushed to the margins. This hierarchy forms almost instantly when people meet, and the brain uses visual clues to determine where everyone belongs. Think about how quickly your mind evaluates strangers. Within seconds, you notice their clothes, their posture, their confidence, the way they carry themselves. You might not consciously say it out loud, but your brain is making rapid calculations. Is this person successful? Is this person important? Is this person someone worth listening to? And the uncomfortable truth is that these judgments are rarely based on deep evidence. They are based on signals that suggest competence, discipline, and control. This is why powerful people throughout history have always been extremely careful about how they present themselves. Kings wore crowns, generals wore decorated uniforms, judges wear robes. Even in modern corporate environments, executives tend to dress differently from entry-level employees. These visual differences are not random. They exist for one reason: to communicate authority instantly. Robert Greene explains this idea clearly in the 48 Laws of Power through Law 34. Be royal in your own fashion. Act like a king to be treated like one. This law is not about arrogance. It is about understanding a simple psychological reality. People treat you according to how you present yourself. If you carry yourself like someone insignificant, the world will treat you as insignificant. But if you project confidence, order, and control, people begin responding to you differently. They listen more carefully. They hesitate before disrespecting you. They assume you have value. And here is the strange part. Once people begin treating you as valuable, new opportunities start appearing. This is not magic. It is perception. Perception shaping behavior. Imagine two individuals walking into the same business meeting. Both have the exact same intelligence. Both have the exact same qualifications. But one arrives looking polished, composed, and confident. The other arrives looking careless, distracted, and disorganized. Before the meeting even begins, something subtle has already happened. One person has gained authority. The other has lost it. When the first person speaks, people lean forward and listen. When the second person speaks, people question their credibility. Not because their ideas are worse, but because their signals are weaker. And once these signals are established, they create a powerful psychological loop. Respect leads to more confidence. Confidence leads to stronger signals. Stronger signals lead to even more respect. Meanwhile, the opposite loop can also form. Disrespect leads to hesitation. Hesitation weakens signals. Weak signals lead to even more disrespect. This is why appearance is not superficial in the world of power. It is strategic. It is a tool that influences how people categorize you in the social hierarchy. People who ignore this reality often believe that pure talent will eventually overcome perception. Sometimes it does. But far more often, talented individuals remain overlooked, simply because they failed to communicate their value visually. Robert Greene frequently reminds his readers that power is not always about who is the most capable. It is about who is perceived as the most capable. And perception is shaped long before you ever get the chance to prove yourself. This is why some people rise quickly in competitive environments. They understand the importance of signaling. Their clothing is intentional. Their posture is controlled. Their presence communicates discipline. Even when they say very little, the room senses authority. Others, however, unknowingly sabotage themselves. They treat appearance as unimportant. They neglect small details. They assume their abilities will speak loudly enough to compensate. But the truth is brutal. Abilities rarely get the chance to speak if the room has already decided you are not worth listening to. And that decision is often made within moments of seeing you. This is where many people misunderstand the phrase looking poor. Looking poor is not simply about having limited money. Many wealthy individuals dress poorly and project weakness. And many people with modest incomes present themselves with extraordinary confidence and control. Looking poor is about something deeper. It is about the signals of neglect, wrinkled clothing, poor grooming, defeated posture, avoiding eye contact, moving with hesitation. All of these signals tell the brain a story that says this person lacks order, this person lacks discipline, this person lacks control. And when the brain hears that story, it quietly places the person lower in the social hierarchy. Once placed there, it becomes extremely difficult to escape, because the system begins reinforcing the judgment. Fewer opportunities, less respect, less attention. Over time, the individual begins internalizing the treatment. Their confidence drops, their posture weakens even more, and the cycle continues. This is how appearance silently shapes destiny. Not because appearance changes who you truly are, but because it changes how the world responds to you. And the world's response influences the opportunities you receive. This is why powerful individuals treat appearance as a form of armor. Not vanity, armor, something that protects their status. Something that communicates control before a single word is spoken. But to truly understand how powerful this psychological weapon can be, we need to examine a story from history. A story that proves how dramatically appearance alone can influence human behavior. A story about a man who had absolutely no power, no money, no authority, and yet managed to control an entire town simply by changing how he looked. His name was Wilhelm Voigt, and what he did shocked an entire nation. But more importantly, it revealed just how easily the human mind can be manipulated by appearance. And once you hear what happened next, you will never underestimate the power of perception again. And once you hear what happened next, you will never underestimate the power of perception again. The year was 1906. In Berlin, Germany, there lived a man named Wilhelm Voigt. Voigt was the opposite of powerful. He was poor. He was unemployed. He had a criminal record that made it nearly impossible to find work. Society had pushed him to the bottom. To most people, he looked like a failure with no future, no authority, no influence. But Voigt understood something about human psychology that most people never realize. He understood that people do not always obey power. Often they obey the appearance of power. One day Voigt walked into a second-hand shop and bought pieces of an old Prussian military captain's uniform. It wasn't perfect. The uniform was mismatched and slightly worn, but it carried one powerful symbol: authority. When Voigt put on that uniform, something remarkable happened. The same man who had been invisible to society suddenly became someone important. His posture changed, his confidence changed, but more importantly, the way people reacted to him changed. Soldiers on the street saw the uniform and immediately assumed he was their superior. They saluted him. They listened to him. They followed his orders, not because they knew him, not because they had verified his authority, but because the uniform signaled power, and the human brain is conditioned to respond to those signals instantly. Voigt decided to push the illusion even further. He approached a group of armed soldiers and calmly ordered them to accompany him on an official mission, and the soldiers obeyed. Think about that for a moment. Armed, trained soldiers following a complete stranger. Why? Because their brains recognized the visual symbol of authority. Voigt marched them through the streets to the town hall of Köpenick. Inside the building were local officials who believed they were about to meet a real military captain. Voigt ordered the arrest of the town's mayor. The soldiers carried out the command. Then he confiscated the entire treasury of the town and walked away with the money. For hours, no one questioned the situation. No one challenged him. The uniform was enough. Eventually, the truth was discovered and Voigt was arrested. But the story spread across Germany like wildfire, not because of the crime, but because of what it revealed about human psychology. An entire town had been controlled by a man who had zero authority. All he had done was change how he looked. The uniform alone was enough to trigger obedience. This event became known as the Captain of Köpenick, and it remains one of the most powerful demonstrations of perception ever recorded. What makes this story so fascinating is not just the deception. It is the deeper lesson. Human beings are wired to trust visual cues of power, uniforms, symbols, appearance, posture. These things influence behavior long before logic enters the picture. The brain evolved to make quick decisions about status and authority. In ancient times, this ability helped humans survive. Recognizing leaders, warriors, and threats quickly could mean the difference between life and death. But in modern society, this same instinct can be manipulated. People who understand the psychology of status, signals can shape how others react to them. They can create the impression of authority even before they truly possess it. This is why successful individuals are extremely aware of how they present themselves. They understand that appearance is not just decoration, it is communication. Every detail sends a message. Clothing communicates discipline. Posture communicates confidence. Grooming communicates self-respect. And when all of these signals align, something powerful happens. People begin to treat you differently, not because they know your story, but because their brains have already placed you into a higher status category. Once that happens, the entire system begins working for you instead of against you. Opportunities appear more easily. People listen more carefully. Your words carry more weight. The same idea that was ignored yesterday suddenly becomes valuable today. Nothing about your intelligence changed. Nothing about your talent changed. But the perception changed, and perception shapes behavior. Robert Greene often emphasizes that power is rarely about brute force. More often, power is about controlling the narrative others believe about you. If people believe you are important, they treat you as important. If people believe you are successful, they assume your ideas are valuable. If people believe you are powerful, they hesitate to challenge you. This is why appearance should never be treated as something trivial. It is one of the most powerful psychological tools available. Not because it changes reality, but because it changes how people respond to reality. And once people start responding differently, your actual reality begins to change as well. But there is an even deeper layer to this strategy, a principle that separates those who simply look good from those who truly command respect. Because the most powerful individuals do not just control their clothing, they control their presence, the way they walk, the way they sit, the way they look at others. These subtle behaviors send even stronger signals than clothing ever could. And when these signals align with a strong appearance, something remarkable happens. People begin to feel that they are standing in front of someone important, even if they cannot explain why. In the final part of this lesson, we will break down the practical signals of power that immediately change how people perceive you. Small details, subtle behaviors, simple adjustments that transform the way the world reacts to you. Because once you understand these signals, you stop fighting the system and start using it. And once people start responding differently, your actual reality begins to change as well. But there is an even deeper layer to this strategy, a principle that separates those who simply dress well from those who truly command respect. Because powerful individuals understand something most people ignore. Power is not communicated through clothes alone. It is communicated through signals, small behaviors, subtle movements, tiny details that quietly tell the room, this person is not ordinary. Robert Greene often emphasizes that status is not something you demand. It is something you project. And the people who project it successfully follow a few silent rules. Rules that shape how others perceive them long before a conversation begins. The first rule is control of movement. Watch powerful individuals carefully. They rarely move in a rushed or nervous manner. Their gestures are slower, more deliberate, more controlled. Why? Because rushed movement signals anxiety, and anxiety signals lower status. A person who constantly fidgets, shifts, or looks around the room nervously sends a subconscious message. The message says, this person is unsure, this person is uncomfortable, and the human brain instinctively lowers their perceived authority. Powerful people do the opposite. They move calmly. They take their time. They appear comfortable occupying space. This calmness signals something extremely important: control. The second rule is posture. Posture might seem like a small detail, but psychologically it is one of the strongest signals of confidence. Slouched shoulders communicate defeat. A lowered head communicates submission. Avoiding eye contact communicates insecurity. These signals trigger immediate judgments in the minds of others. But when someone stands upright, shoulders back, head level, eyes steady, a completely different message is received. The message says, this person respects themselves.